Honestly, I might be a little late to the party on this one, but people still seem to be asking me questions about this, so figured why not. This is the Sony A7C, and of course you probably know that there is now an A7C II and an R2 as well, if you're interested in that. Now, I don't have those cameras, and I don't plan to buy them, but I do own the A7C, and I think, knowing what I know about those new versions of this camera, I could help you make a decision on if you should just pick up a used A7C for very affordable prices or purchase a brand new A7C II. And to be honest, if you want to skip everything and not know why I think that and what the differences are, I think you should. The Sony A7C was my first camera. It's what I first bought. I got a little bunch of lenses, a little camera kit used with this A7C, and it did the job. It is a good little camera for sure. But if you've watched my other video, which I'll link somewhere up here, I got an A7 IV as an upgrade, and that's what I'm filming this with right now. And there's just no comparison. It is way more fun using that A7 IV, and it also is getting me way better results. Not that you can't get good results with A7C, but when it comes down to amount of photos taken that I like versus the amount of photos taken that I don't like, the A7 IV is coming out wildly on top, and I'm also getting there much quicker. And that generally comes down to the difference of design between that camera and this camera. And that direct comparison will also apply to the A7C II and the A7C. The first and most important change probably is the image quality that is a result of them changing the sensor. You've now got 33 megapixels in the A7C II versus the 24 in the A7C. And honestly, that's gonna make a huge difference. If you're doing any kind of cropping, you're gonna love having that little bit more megapixels to play with when you're cropping your photos in the edit. And I do wildlife stuff a lot, and I need that. So huge difference there. But not only that, it's just a newer and better sensor. There is an argument to say that smaller sensors aren't worse because they're generally better in low light performance. But I think there's also a difference in quality in sensors. So it's not like just the size is what matters. And in my experience, that 33 megapixel sensor is much better looking than the old one in the original A7C and A7 III. Another thing that's actually hugely upgraded beyond even my A7 IV that I'm using right now is the autofocus. And that is one of the biggest reasons why you would probably want to go for the A7C II over the A7C, because the autofocus in this is fine, but it's not that intelligent. If you're in any kind of low light situation, it really struggles. And the new one is just like shockingly good. It's like an AI version of autofocus where it can tell, hey, that's human, that's their head, that's their eye, that's their ear. You know, like you can turn around and it works. It can identify cars and birds and separate and prioritize between birds and different animals and dogs, and it can do it all. It's just like as good as autofocus will ever need to be, in my opinion. It's wild. I haven't used it on the A7C II, but I've used that autofocus system on the A7R5, which was also a fantastic camera. And that feature alone is probably worth the upgrade. You've also got an upgraded video ability in that now you have 10-bit video over 8-bit, which really does look better in every way, I think. But you've also got 4K at 60 frames per second, so you couldn't do slow-mo in 4K with the A7C, but you now can in the A7C II, which is really great if you want, to play with smooth looking footage for your reels or whatever. It's just a handy feature. Just know that it will crop to get there. But that's pretty standard for most cameras other than like the FX3 and A7S III. And if you are a video shooter, you're going to care about this as well, is that the stabilization has been greatly improved. I really couldn't get any good handheld footage out of this camera. If I had a lens with OSS, that might have been a different story, but only my 600mm has that, and that's a really hard thing to shoot handheld video with. So the new A7C II has their upgraded stabilization. I believe it's the same one that is in their A7R5, and it really is shocking. You can do some incredible handheld footage, really smooth, and it actually is also really handy for shooting long exposure or slower exposure stills. Honestly, the A7C II is winning in all the categories. The menu system is way better. Like once you get into that, you're never going to want to go back to the old one. You've got some other perks like focus mapping and auto framing and other kind of like, they're not gimmicks, but they're, software features that are handy if that is something you need. But the most important thing and what I've saved best for last, is the physical design of the camera. They have made changes that make it a camera worth considering, in my opinion. The A7C II, that is. Because previously, having gotten the A7 IV, after having an A7C, I just couldn't recommend this anymore because I didn't know what I didn't know when I got this. And that is that there are functions, physical buttons and dials on a camera that just need to be there. And this A7C Mark I doesn't have them. It just doesn't. And it makes it really slow and hard to operate to get what you want in the moment. All right, so what's missing in the A7C? There is no dial right here, which is normally where an aperture is programmed on a Sony camera. There is no joystick, so you can't control your spot focus while you're shooting, which is like imperative with wildlife, in my opinion. And a lot of situations, I like a joystick. It's just my preferred way to shoot. And there's no custom buttons, so you can't set like a white balance button or a zebra button or whatever you want. It's not there. You don't have that ability. You are going to be really slow. You end up having to customize like every little button, but there's always a trade-off, and then you fill up your function window. There's just not enough things to hybrid shoot with this camera, in my opinion. You're going to miss those features, and once you have them, you'll never go back. But the A7C isn't fully fleshed out, and that is where this conversation becomes like, should you get the A7C II or the A7 IV, really? And that comes down to how much you love a joystick. I love a joystick, so I'm definitely not considering an A7C II for myself, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't recommend it for other people, because they have added a front dial for your aperture. You can keep your shutter on the D-pad control. Your ISO is still there, and they've added custom buttons, so it's all possible to get by. It may not be as fast and ergonomic as a full-size camera, because like they fit all this into this tiny little body, the A7C II in this case. Whereas, you know, it's a bigger body if you want everything else, like my A7 IV. But I actually prefer that. It fits my hand better. So that's another consideration. So is small good for your mitts? If you've got big mitts, the A7C is probably too small. I missed that button right there. I have to like cramp my finger to take a photo or record. I'm better off just using my thumb, I think, sometimes. With A7 IV and, you know, a more full-size mirrorless camera, it is much ergonomically a better fit for my size anyways. So keep that in mind. Your camera needs to fit you. Price-wise, it's definitely a little bit more expensive, I think, but it's honestly worth it in spades. This A7C feels last gen to me. There's so many upgrades that have been made since it came out, and for not that much more money, I think you are getting a lot more camera. So if you want a little camera and you want it to be able to perform in pretty professional like settings, the A7C II is probably a great choice, and it's what I would recommend over the A7C for sure. I hope this helped. This is just me theorizing on if it's an upgrade. Like honestly, I would love to make that trade. I would swap this for an A7C II and keep this as my B cam in a heartbeat. But nobody's going to make that trade. So for now, I'm just hanging on to this until I can get an FX3 as my video camera, honestly. I'm excessive. Hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this kind of video and you want more of it, please do subscribe and stick around, and comment down below. Let me know which one you're leaning towards, what camera you're going to get next. Love to know. Adios. Bye.